So as with all of our presentations here at Railroads University, it's so important that we begin with an acknowledgement of the traditional lands. At Railroads University, we acknowledge that our campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. It's with great gratitude that we now live, learn, work, and play where the past, present, and future scopes of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, staff, and faculty come together. This is a great time to test out that chat box function. So again, if you see that black bar below and give the chat box a click, let us know where in the world are you joining us from today? What space within higher education are you working in? And if you joined today's session with any burning questions, feel free to pop them right in the chat box now. And we'll swing back to the chat box a bit later to see who's in the room with us today. So we are all here today to chat about the very exciting graduate certificate in Strategic Enrolment Management. My name is Selena Kunar, and I'm an education specialist here on campus who is very eager to learn more about this brand new certificate. And we are going to learn a lot more from Dr. Russ Wilde. Russ is the program head of our Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration and Leadership program, as well as this one. Hey, Russ, thanks for being here.
Thanks very much, Selena.
We're going to hear a lot more from Russ in just a few slides. But first, let's hear from all of you. So I'm going to click around and get that chat box open to see where in the world everyone's joining us from today. So we have Lisa Murray. Lisa is actually one of our wonderful enrollment specialists. So you'll see her in the chat box popping helpful links throughout our session today and helping answer any questions that might come up as well. So thanks for joining us, Lisa, from Saanich, BC. We have folks from Guelph, the RU campus itself, amazing. Calgary, London, Ontario, UNBC in Prince George. So we have folks from all across Canada, and reflecting on our registration page, we had folks registered from all across the world as well. So a big, big welcome to all of you. And hopefully we can get some of your questions answered today. Oh, Sean from Halifax, big welcome. So please keep those introductions coming into the chat box because it'll help us understand who's in the room today and how we can make sure the information is most helpful to all of you. Next, we're going to cruise into a quick exploration of RRU and our student experience. Of course, head on over to talk about the program itself. Cap off with a walkthrough of our application and admission requirements. Then, of course, leave time for that question and conversation period. But again, pop your questions in the chat box as they come up for you today. So let's talk really quickly about Railroads. This is quite a fair representation of our campus. Being located in Victoria, BC, we're very lucky to have quite mild weather year-round. So this is what our space looks like most times of the year. And yeah, we know we're pretty lucky. So while you're taking a look at all these photographs from Hatley Castle, our learning and instruction buildings in the back behind in that photo, our Japanese gardens, a Esquimalt Lagoon, and then a demonstration of online learning, I'm just gonna share a little bit about some things we value here at Railroads and how that shows up in our learning. So here at Railroads, we've maintained small class sizes and a conversational way of teaching, because we find when your professors and your teaching teams become your peers, classes become think tanks and learning becomes a way of life on our campus. Here at Railroads, our learning is based on your life. So not only is your education shaping your experiences in your professional world and personal world, academic world, they are shaping the experiences you're having in our classroom as well. Being a university for working professionals means that our students are bringing real-world challenges from their workplace into our classroom. And together, we're moving through real-world problem solving in real time. Another cool thing you'll find in our classrooms are your teaching teams and your cohort members. We're so lucky that all of our professors here at Railroads University are what we call scholar practitioners. So folks who are not only academic experts in the field, but those who are still out in the world putting into practice what they teach in our classrooms. Also, here at Rural Roads, we have something called flexible admissions. We're gonna dive deeper into that in a few slides, but flexible admissions is so important and so core to who we are at Rural Roads University because it allows us to purposefully create these learning communities, your cohort members who come from unique backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences who will ultimately find yourself complementing and challenging your own perspectives and experiences. The cohort model is really exciting, particularly for programs like these, where our learners are all coming from the same field. So within higher education, we've thinking back to our Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration Leadership, it's so wonderful to talk to our alumni who say that, you know, their WhatsApp chats are still buzzing. They're connecting with their cohort members when they see an opening at their institution. And these supportive learning communities turn into these amazing professional networks. In the bottom corner of the slide here, you see online learning happening, and that is especially relevant for today's unprecedented times. So Rural Roads, we pioneered this blended learning model over 25 years ago. So we were well positioned when COVID-19 hit to support our learners, staff, those who are associated with our university in moving our life-changing experiences online. Rural Roads is where we bring together the best of an online and in-person learning experience because we believe that higher education should be powerful enough to transcend location. And that's why our RU experience isn't limited to these beautiful walls you see here, but to the walls of your classrooms, your bedrooms, your kitchens, wherever you are learning with us throughout your program here at Rural Roads. So we're just going to take a quick peek at what online learning means at Rural Roads. So often online learning can sometimes be confused with correspondence learning. So you know that, you know, a big package gets mailed to you, you kind of fill it out, you do your work and you mail it back. There's a version of that that's moved online, but at Rural Roads, that is not how we do things. This slide is just a quick and simple snapshot of all the different ways that our online learning is incredibly engaging, incredibly community building, and incredibly relevant to the times we're living in today. So just looking here, you can see that we have activities focused on reflection. We have opportunities for your peers to not only provide you feedback, but to engage in discussion together. We have team assignments. We have feedback from your instructors and opportunities for continued dialogue. And then, you know, the good stuff, the readings, the building shared knowledge, all that comes along with our online experience as well. And in a few slides, we're going to talk about what online learning looks like specifically for this program, but we just wanted to give you a snapshot and make sure you know that online learning at Rural Roads University, well done via a laptop, you are extremely engaged with your cohort and your staff and faculty all throughout your program. So with that, why don't I pass the microphone over to you, Russ, to talk about this exciting program.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much for that introduction, Selena. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. I'd like to just talk a little bit about, before we talk about the graduate certificate in Strategic Enrolment Management, I want to talk just a little bit about our MHEAL program in general and give you a sense of where that certificate fits into the bigger picture. So maybe next slide, please. So we have a suite of programs that fit within the Master of Arts, Higher Education Administration and Leadership. And of course, they start with the full 2-year program, the Master of Arts program, that includes 2 different streams, one in systems leadership and one in international business development. Our master's students can pick one of those 2 streams. They take many of the same courses, core courses together, but there are some options to take different specialties depending on where you work right now or what your aspirations are in higher ed administration. within all those courses that we have in the Master of Arts program, there's also the option for the graduate diploma in higher ed, admin, and leadership. And that is essentially the first year of the master's program. Some people feel that that's all they'll need for their current career goals, but those courses are all completely transferable to the master's program should someone who completes that wish to do so. And we do have some students who feel that that's the best place for them to start. Then there are 2 certificates within that are made up entirely of the courses that are within the Master of Arts suite of courses. And that's the Graduate Certificate in Business Development and International Education and the Graduate Certificate in Systems Leadership. And those both consist of 9 credits, 3 courses each. And the difference between those graduate certificates and the one that we're here to talk about today is that those certificates all include only courses that are within the Master of Arts program. But today we want to focus on the Graduate Certificate in Strategic Enrolment Management. And it is made up of 3 courses, but only one of them is within the current Master of Arts set of courses, and 2 are specialty courses that are only found within this graduate certificate. So maybe next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about strategic enrollment management. I am sure a lot of people here, because of your interest in the program, already have a great deal of knowledge of what strategic enrollment management is. I know certainly Selena and Lisa both work within an aspect of our own university that not just overlaps, but is part of strategic enrollment management. So they know a great deal as well. And both of you feel free to chime in at any point. Strategic enrollment management started out as being mostly about better planning for enrollment and management, enrollment and retention of students within post-secondary institutions. But it has really grown to become a catch-all for the strategic planning function of higher ed institutions, especially focused on recruitment, enrollment, and management. But because that overlaps with almost everything an institution does, SEM has come to have tendrils that reach out into every aspect of administration, admissions, certainly all the accounting and finance operations, the planning and budgeting at an institution, the marketing, the recruitment, the registrar's office, and even into the academic side, not in terms of content and subject matter expertise and curriculum and things like that, but certainly into the academic portfolio in terms of vice presidents academic rely on the activity of SEM professionals to help understand the marketplace, the optimal programming and student mix that will best serve the institution, that will best serve students, that will best serve the economy, and thus best serve the needs of government as well. All of those are important stakeholders in the higher education mix. And a lot of what SEM does is try to balance and optimize our institutions so that the interests of all these stakeholders are optimized and best served. Let's go on to the next slide, Selena. So learning outcomes for this graduate certificate. You can see them here. This certificate, because it's short, is more focused on the theory and practice of recruitment, enrollment, and retention, some of the challenges, best strategic practices in those areas, but of course touches on and gives you a sense of the wide scope of SEM in North American higher education institutions. I think, yeah, well, let me talk just a little bit. I will talk a little bit more specifically when we get to the specific courses in the certificate. But I do want to highlight the last bullet on this slide, measure the success of a SEM plan by developing key enrollment targets, enrollment strategies and goals, and evaluation processes. The two courses, the two SEM-specific courses really form a unit that are tightly integrated. And as you'll see as we get to some of the next slides, by the end of it, you will have gone through the theory part of SEM, and then we'll apply it to developing your own SEM strategic plan for an institution. And that's where you'll get to actually look at these enrollment targets, enrollment strategies, and how you'd evaluate it. And you'll do that in a very practical sense by developing your own practice plan. Let's go to the next one, Selena. So this is just how the schedule will roll out for the next offering. You'll see at the top of this chart that there are two short courses, the Link and Introduction to Academic Integrity. Those are courses that everyone in our programs take to start off. In many ways, you could consider them the onboarding courses to any program. They're just short, largely self-study. And the link is to make sure everyone gets to is at the same place. In knowing how to use our learning management system, we use Moodle here at Royal Roads. Introduction to Academic Integrity, make sure that everyone understands the expectations around academic integrity and scholarship. And then the three courses in the certificate are listed below that in the table. Everyone starts with HEAL 550, Systems Thinking. That is a common course within all of the other programs within MHEAL. It is an excellent foundational course. One thing to know about that course is that because it's common and because there are people in the different graduate certificates as well as the master's program taking that, it's quite a large course. There's often many people registered, which is great in a lot of ways. And also that we often have folks registered in that from outside our programs altogether because it's such a popular course. You get a chance to interact with a lot of people from a lot of different areas and get to apply systems thinking to a lot of different situations. It still has a higher education focus because it's core to the MHEAL programs, but there's a real opportunity to interact, work in teams with a diverse group there. From there, you move into the two specific SEM courses, HEAL 580 and 585. Enrollment Management Theory and Practice really does focus heavily on the theory behind SEM, a lot of readings, lots of teamwork to better understand the theory behind SEM ideas. And then for 585, Strategic Enrollment Planning, it's much more practice-based. It culminates in the completion of a practice strategic enrollment plan for an institution. So you get to see all the phases of this practice and how they connect across an institution. We're currently just in our first running of this certificate. So right now students have completed 580 and have just started in the last week and a half, have just started HEAL 585. So next slide, please. And I think in many ways I've actually already spoken to this. This is just a list of the individual courses and what you can expect from each one. So Selena, I think that brings me to the end of my section. And then of course I'm here to answer questions as we get further on.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Russ. We gave you a short amount of time to go through a lot of information. So thank you for that. We're going to take a few slides now to move through the application process and our admission requirements. But this is a great time. If you have any questions about the program itself, or course content, things like that, feel free to pop it in the chat box because we're just a few slides away from a Q&A. So with that, let's kick off with talking about our admission requirements. So as I mentioned, here at Royal Roads University, we have our standard admissions as well as flexible admissions. So standard admissions is just that, the standard requirements that you'll see typical with most post-secondary education programming. So for our course here, standard admissions would be 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as a minimum of 3 years of relevant paid work experience within the higher education institutions, including some leadership experience. I'll point out that you see that asterisk there by leadership, and that's because here at Rural Roads, leadership can mean many, many things. Within this program specifically, that can include positional leadership, so manager, director, AVP, things like that. But we really want to highlight that leadership can be embodied in many different ways. So, for example, if you find yourself in a role where you're leading others toward shared goals or outcomes, where you find yourself influencing, organizing, or coordinating groups of people, roles within volunteer organizations, roles where you're consulting, managing diverse interest groups, moving through complex relationships in very complex environments, but also things like overcoming a challenging life experience for self or others, which involves navigating complex systems and resulted in a positive community change beyond the individual. So, this one is one that really is where people find themselves self-selecting out sometimes. They go, oh, I haven't been a manager for 3 years. I guess that's not me. No way. If you're asking yourself those kind of questions, know that there's innate leadership within you already. So if you have any questions about your experience and what could check that leadership box off, connect with our offices because we're more than happy to move through those conversations. Moving to flexible admissions. So flexible admissions is for those folks who may not have a traditional academic background, but who have been working in the field for a significant number of years. As we mentioned early on, here at Rural Roads, we really emphasize the strength that comes from that real-world applied learning. And a lot of our learning is based around that, bringing in those real-life challenges and having discussions in our classrooms. So we recognize that folks with extensive experience in the field have contributed to the body of learning that would qualify them to be a part of this wonderful program. So for example, for flexible admissions, we'd be looking for folks with a minimum of 7 years of work experience within the higher education sector, and as well including a minimum of 3 years of leadership experience. You'll note that that's a very simple descriptor of what could qualify for flexible admissions. And that's because at Rural Roads, we assess flexible admissions on a case-by-case basis. So we want to know all about you, your professional, personal, academic experiences, and all the different ways that has contributed to where you've gotten today and where you're hoping to go in the future. So again, if you have any questions about flexible admissions, what that could mean for you, connect with our offices. So how exactly do we go about ensuring that our application process is as holistic as I've made it out to be? Well, it's through some of our supporting documents. As many things these days, our application process kicks off with an online application. That online application comes with a fee of $128.81 at this time. And once your online application is in, we're then going to look towards your supporting documents to get to know you a little bit better. So we have things like official transcripts, official meaning that they do need to arrive at our institution sealed. Though in these extraordinary times, institutions are moving through sending transcripts in some different ways. So we recommend connecting with your sending institution to understand how they're providing their transcripts at this time. Next on the list, a personal statement. So this is where we get to learn a little bit more about why are you interested in this program? What can this program provide you? What can you provide to this cohort learning environment? So if you head to our website, it's a wonderful resource to help understand, the practicalities of these documents, how long they should be, how you submit them, but also some helpful information about what questions should you be answering to ensure that you're including what we're looking for. So for example, for your personal statement, questions like, what can you contribute to the class's learning? What do you anticipate will be your challenge as a grad student in the GC-SEM program? What do you expect from this program in terms of the learning process? And what do you envision for your professional goals once you've completed the program? Next on this list is the structured resume. So again, the website has some really helpful information around different categories and sections you should include in this document to make sure all of your accomplishments shine bright. So for example, education, work experience, any training or professional development, voluntary/unpaid work, leadership/change agent/trainer experience, all sorts of different things we highlight as things you can include as an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit better. And then finally, 2 letters of reference. And on our website, we have more information about who those referees can be and how they get their letters to our offices. Upcoming intakes. So we are actually not too far away from our 2022 start date. So if you're eager to begin this program with us this year in 2022, you would start the program in August 15th of 2022, putting your application deadline at May 15th, 2022. And if you're here today doing some future planning, well, we have our 2023 dates listed as well. So if you're looking for 2023, you would start August 14th of that year, putting your application deadline as May 14th of 2023. This is a great time for me to note that here at Rural Roads, we accept applications on a rolling basis. So that means we're not actually going to wait until May 15th, 2022 to look at everything that's been submitted and then let you know about your seat in the program. Instead, if you meet the requirements of our program, your supporting documents are in, we adjudicate your file and let you know right away about your seat in the program. This is really important for programs or courses such as the one Russ mentioned, where things can really fill up. So if you're interested in any program here at Rural Roads, we highly recommend getting that online application in as soon as you can. So that indicates to us your interest in the program, and then we can work together getting those supporting documents in. So of course, if you have any questions about any of that, we'll share some information in a slide or 2 here about where you can find us. But first, we wanted to make sure we included this slide about financial aid. We get lots of questions around the different resources we have on our campus. And as we should, financial planning is a critical part to being able to look towards post-secondary education. So we're so proud of our financial aid and awards specialists who have their fingertips on resources available internally at Rural Roads, but externally as well. So they can help answer questions around things like loans, awards, research scholarships, or other types of funding as well. So on this slide here, you can see their website, but also their direct phone lines, toll-free as well. I'm going to guess that Lisa will likely pop a link to their blog in our chat box as well. Please, if you're interested in education at Rural Roads University, connect with our financial aid office because you never know what supports you may qualify for. Oh, and speaking of supports, our enrollment services office. So Lisa is just one beautiful example of the team we have here on campus, eager to answer any questions you might have about this program or any others on our campus as well. So if you want to connect with Lisa and her team, you can find them at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us from outside of Canada, Lisa's counterparts in international admissions and registration will be happy to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. And we'll be sure to include that information in our follow-up email as well, just in case folks are furiously writing those emails down. So with that, we have come to the end of our formal presentation today, But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click around a little bit, bring down these slides so we can open up our chat box and answer any questions that may have come up. And also get to some frequently asked questions as well. So a few clicks and your screens might change here. And let me open up that chat box. So we have a question around cost. What a great question. Lisa, would you be able to pop any information about cost and those links in our chat box? Oh, and we have a great question here from Ali for you, Russ. Do you think this course would be helpful from a marketing/communications perspective to understand and drive enrollment? Or is it more geared to the nitty-gritty administration, planning, and strategizing for SEM?
Great question. And Selena, I'll ask for your input too, but I'll give mine to start. As currently constituted with the 2 courses, and we're just going into our second intake, the courses are more focused on I guess what would be sort of the nitty-gritty of strategic enrollment management in a traditional sense, but very much geared to take into account the importance of all of these other aspects of a higher ed institution in creating those plans. There's an opportunity for future development within the courses themselves and potentially in other course offerings for the evolving role of SEM. But as they stand right now, I would say that their primary value to someone who is more in a marketing communications role would be in better understanding how that aspect of an institution, which is so central to its strategic plan, might impact their own role in marketing and communications. And Selena and Lisa, I'd be open to your thoughts on that as well, since you're so involved in these areas.
Oh, Russ, I absolutely echo your thoughts there. I was very fortunate through my program at Rural Roads, I was able to hop in to a course within the MA program, so the MA in Higher Education Leadership, Administration and Leadership. And this was before this exciting certificate hit our campus. And in that course, we had folks from every single area within higher education, from purchasing to planning to administration, marketing, communications, recruitment, and the kinds of conversations we were able to have as just in the cohort outside of, the topic we were learning, and then going, well, how is this relevant to your role? Oh, I didn't even think about that. I know those type of conversations really changed the way that I was able to support students in my role. And the course we were in was around, the history of perspectives of higher education nationally. So, a course that I really thought was going to be, I'm just here to learn like some fun facts. We'll see how we got here. But instead was so relevant to what was happening now and my work right now. So while I haven't personally taken a course within this program, just pulling from my experience in Mahil, absolutely, the cohort is able to make it really relevant for anyone within any department in higher education. Oh, and Ali, LOL, great answers, thanks. It does sound integral to everyone working at a university, absolutely. And continuing off that question, Willem, can you say a bit more about how current day SEM is branching out to include the academic side of an institution as well? How is that approached in the 2 courses?
Really good question. My understanding of SEM, and I'll say it's not my particular discipline in higher ed, but as I've talked to the practitioners and understand it, SEM started out in many ways as strategic planning for the enrollment function, and branched out into the need to then, well, you enroll people, but how about their success? How about their long-term retention and completion of programs? And then, of course, comes into that conversation, well, what supports are in place for learners in an organization to help them? And so it started to include all the student support functions as well. Now, and then of course, you talk about, well, how do we look at what the needs of industry are, and what do we, to make sure that when people complete a program, that they have an opportunity to gain employment in a meaningful way for them and for our economy and for our government and all of these kinds of things, to meet the needs of many stakeholders. And so as time has gone on, my understanding is that strategic enrollment management has come to be an integral part of just the strategic planning of an institution. And I think in many ways the central aspect of it, because so much of this has to do with budgeting, knowing who is in which programs, how much those programs cost, how you're going to budget and staff for all these things, absolutely central to the optimization of the plan for an organization, which is incredibly challenging in higher ed, more challenging than many industries in the world. So it's come to encompass a lot of that. Now, the question of how that's treated in these courses and program right now, still heavily focused on that central strategic enrollment planning function, but with very much an acknowledgement or recognition that it's not a function that can be separated from the rest of the institution, that while you're engaged in that process, you absolutely, almost by definition now, must take into account all these other aspects of the institution, including its academic mission. And you get into this situation of, it might be a great plan, but does it accomplish the academic mission of the institution? If not, is it a great plan? There aren't easy answers to these things. It's about optimization in very challenging times. So that's the way it's treated, but the courses themselves focus on the core functions of this role, given that we're only talking about 6 credits of STEM-specific courses.
Thanks so much, Russ. Before we move on to the next question, I'll just share that Lisa had shared some of her perspective on this as well, and shared, yes, I believe when you're considering or learning from a systems perspective, it can be beneficial to have more folks from across the system. Thanks so much, Lisa. And Lisa's also popped the link for tuition and fee information as well for our earlier question. Our next question here from Scott. Are there any future considerations to allow certificates like this one to ladder into your doctoral degrees? That's a great question, Scott. Yeah. I'm not sure if, so right now, as Russ has mentioned, conversations are happening around the integration of this certificate into our MA in higher education, administration, and leadership. So that's very exciting. Right now, that program has 2 different specializations embedded within it. Though I can say we've had conversations about these sort of certificates offering course credit in our DSOC-SCI, our Doctor of Social Science, or our Doctor of Business Administration. Yeah. But that is well worth us considering.
It's an interesting idea, none that I'm aware of right now.
Great question, Scott. Thanks for getting our thinking in that place. We have a question from Callie. How large are your cohorts? With online delivery, are they unlimited, or are they still kept to 24 or 36?
Yeah, so great question. For most of our courses, they're in the range of 25. We would go up as high as 30 at the very, very, very top. The ones that I have experienced so far have been smaller, more in the range of 20 to 25. The current running in our initial run for the SEM certificate, I believe there are 9, but our intention is to have that be around the 25 mark.
Amazing, thank you. And as Russ mentioned, those folks are quickly nearing the end of their program. So we can't wait to talk to them about their experience. I'm just gonna find our chat box once again. So we have really a big, great question from Lisa. Do the courses address initiatives to support retention of equity-seeking or marginalized groups?
So the answer to that is yes, definitely. There are aspects of the courses that definitely address EDI. You wouldn't find it as a I wouldn't want to oversell it and say that it's a core feature of the courses right now, but they all include content and concern for EDI as part of a post-secondary strategic enrollment plan. Yes.
Amazing. Another question we have here is around, are there any, so knowing that this is online, are there any mandatory synchronous components embedded in the courses?
We don't have mandatory synchronous sessions. It's a very, very good question. And I'll be very honest about this. There are many learners in the programs that would like more synchronous sessions, and we are actually considering putting more in. This first course that we ran, we had 2 synchronous sessions, and most of the feedback that we've just received is that our learners would have liked more. We don't intend to make them mandatory, because we do want people to be able to participate even if they're not able to make the time available for a synchronous session in the evenings. We do record all of our synchronous sessions so that they're available, and we do try to find ways so that everyone can be involved with optional discussion forums based on the content of the synchronous sessions. We're doing our very best to kind of give a best of both worlds without locking people into commitment for synchronous sessions if that just isn't going to work for their schedule. But they are, but to circle back, they are delivered in a blended format, with the main portion being asynchronous and there being synchronous options available.
Cool, thanks, Russ. And we also highlight that those of us in this virtual room today, we're all beaming in from different time zones right now as well, and that really becomes both a blessing and a challenge in the programs when we're looking towards synchronous learning. So that's why in most of our programs at Railroads, you'll notice that while there are synchronous opportunities, I know I really loved them within my program. Rarely ever are they mandatory for that exact reason, because we'll have learners from coast to coast and country to country joining us. And so that has brought us, right to our next question. Wonderful. So Lisa's asking, can you describe the assessment process? For example, I'm wondering if there would be need to carve out time for a large capstone project.
Sure, I can answer that. The answer is, I would say mostly yes. That there, especially for HEAL 585, there is definitely a capstone project, and you need to have sufficient time to be able to complete that. I don't think that for any of these, it's not like when you're completing a thesis or a dissertation, where you might have to take time off work to do that level of concentrated production, but definitely towards the end of 585, I would expect that there would be a need to carve out some additional time to make sure that you could complete that. That said, I think as far as I know, all of our current cohort are working professionals in higher ed. They are balancing this with their current professional responsibilities and other personal responsibilities, and the course is designed to be doable by folks in that kind of situation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Russ. And that's feedback we get from a lot of our alumni as well. When we always, Lisa very kindly at the end of all our webinars offers the opportunity for folks who want to chat with an alumni. She shares some information about that. And that's one of the biggest questions that they get is, well, how much time did it actually take? What was it actually like? And that's an awesome question.
Yeah.
And alumni often share that, Yeah, it takes some time, but it's time that's doable. Um, uh, in our non-virtual times, I remember going to conferences and one alumni laughed and shared, yeah, I didn't do racquetball twice a
Yeah.
week like I did, but that was for that one course that needed some more time. Because what he didn't want to give up was his working time or his family time. So racquetball time became writing time. And now he's back at racquetball. So very doable indeed. So it looks like we are at the end of our questions for today. If you have any others, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. We do have a last few minutes together. And Lisa has shared that, as we mentioned, we encourage our applicants to chat with our amazing alumni. And if you're interested in pursuing those conversations, you can email Lisa directly at lisa.murray@rollroads.ca. And just in case someone is typing, I'm actually just going to quickly highlight some of the other links Lisa has shared in the chat box, and we'll be sure to include those within the comment section of the YouTube video for those who are watching the recording. So Lisa shared our signature pedagogy for the institution, so our learning, research, and teaching model, a webinar around flexible admissions if you want to learn more, the Mahil program page, which speaks to its program design and its specialization and completion options, the upcoming program schedule that we quickly flashed on a slide there, the full course descriptions, which we have listed on our website, the admission requirements that we chatted quickly about, as well as those application requirements and the Financial Aid and Awards Office's blog, the tuition and fee information. And Alicia shared a comment about that question inquiring about the application of this program to doctoral programs. She shared that while I don't believe this program could ladder into a doctorate, it could potentially strengthen your application depending on your intended research area. So if you'd like to explore our Doctor of Social Science, she popped that link in there as well. And then a link to the EDI initiatives here at RRU, and then her email to continue the conversation anytime. So with that, a big thank you to everyone. Russ, was there anything you wanted to share before we close out for today?
No, I think that's everything I know.
Amazing. He knows many, many more things. He just knows we're on the clock. So a big thank you to everyone for joining us today live and those who are watching the recording. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where in the world you're joining us from. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.